Hi, I'm Rick Dior. Early morning here in Charlotte, just getting warmed up a little for the day. I've gotten a lot of questions on this large swish knocker that I use. Some people call it a Chinese cymbal. So I'm going to just spend about, maybe 10, 15 minutes talking about some of these cymbals that I use. This is the one I use the most out of all of my China cymbals. I really love it. I got it from Paiste with a bunch of other cymbals back in the mid-90s. And it's just a great cymbal. It's extremely thin. I'll give you a weight on the video here. But it's got rivets in it, and I put all these rivets in it. Did not come with rivets. It's got my normal 8 pattern, as you can see there. And it lasts pretty long. And it's extremely thin, so it's taken a little bit of a beating over the years. It never was perfect to begin with, so it's starting to get a little wavy, which I think actually adds to its character. Now, there's a lot of lore about these kinds of cymbals. A lot of it comes from, Mel Lewis and Dizzy Gillespie. And I first encountered these cymbals when I saw Dizzy Gillespie one summer in Rochester. It was probably the summer of 1980 or so. I was at Eastman School of Music doing a summer program there. And some of the faculty took us out to go see Dizzy. He was playing in a park there. And I'd seen him before over the years, but not his band. I'd see him with, as a guest star with other people. Well, this was his group. And I cannot remember the drummer who was playing with him back then. I did not know who it was. It wasn't anyone that I had, listened to or known about at the time. Of course, I was only 16 years old or so. So I remember he had this cymbal. It was a Chinese cymbal, pretty big. It was really beat up. It was missing pieces, but it had rivets, and I was just really fascinated by that cymbal. It sounded great. And so anyway, I kept that in my head. And then about maybe 2 or 3 years later, I was in college up in New York City at the Manhattan School of Music. And I would usually practice all summer at the college, every day, all day. And then once a week, we'd have this jazzmobile thing at Grant's Tomb, which was a park up, there was a park up on Riverside Drive up there. And Grant's Tomb was there, and they would have jazzmobile. What jazzmobile was kind of like a trailer that they would pull around and would open up, and there'd be like a drum set in there and a PA. It was amazing. And they did this all over New York for years and years. It was fantastic. I got to see so many great jazz artists this way. Incredible. Anyway, Dizzy was playing one summer evening, and I remember Sam Rivers was playing sax with him, and he's kind of one of my all-time favorite sax players. Not well known, but just incredible. So I was really excited. And there was a drummer that I didn't know. Later I found out it was Robbie Amin. He had just started playing with him, and he was probably really young. He was probably in his early 20s. Anyway, there was that same cymbal again. Exactly the same cymbal. I'm like thinking, wow, how is that possible? Well, I found out that Dizzy would take that cymbal. It was his cymbal. And he would make all his drummers play it. So every time I saw Dizzy, I saw that cymbal after that, which I thought was really interesting. And other guys would do that too. I mean, Maynard Ferguson had cymbals that he'd make guys play. Stan Kenton, I believe, had a few. So I've heard stories like that where guys would have cymbals. They'd want all the drummers to play them. So anyway, this cymbal is really neat. And I said to myself right then and there, I got to get one of these things because so cool. And of course, I'd seen Mel Lewis play his Chinese cymbal for years and years. And that was I think that was a Wuhan, before, the Wuhan company existed. It was just that kind of cymbal. It was to his right, and it was huge. It was probably 24 inches. And it was just great. I'd never been able to find anything like it. Mostly what was out then were the Zildjian Swish Knocker, a few other things, but there was no other companies that were really making cymbals like that. You'd have to kind of find some sort of old Chinese cymbal that sounded good. Most of them did not sound good. And the Zildjian Swish Knocker was okay, but to me it always sounded a little too sterile. It wasn't hammered. It was just kind of, there. It was pretty neutral sounding. It wasn't really funky. And it didn't have the look and the way those other cymbals moved that I'd seen. Well, anyway, over the years, I acquired several different versions of these cymbals, all the way up to 26 inches, but they never really did it for me until I got this Paiste, and then that day I got it, I hit it, and I said, man, this is it. This has got to sound great. And I went into the shop and drilled it right away and put rivets in it, and then I started playing it. And that was it. I love this cymbal. It feels great. It's not as articulate maybe as Dizzy's cymbal. It sounds similar to Mel Lewis's cymbal, which was very thin. But recorded, it sounds really, really good. And if you don't play it too hard, it speaks really well. Also, if you play it in different areas, it sounds very different. So you see there, I'm going from the edge to the middle, moving around, and it dries up, so you can do that. And of course, like all of these, it has a great crash. So it's articulate, but it's nasty at the same time. It's got a really, white noise kind of sound, which I love. So it's 22 inches exactly. These are precision made. I'm not sure they're making them anymore, but you could probably find them used if they're not. I did get another cymbal with these. They sent me two sizes. This is the 20, and you see I've hardly played this one because this one sounded so great. But I'll put it up there so you can hear it. While I'm changing this out, one thing that makes these cymbals so nice are the bells are so small, and that dries them up a bit. So you can see how small this bell is. It's almost like a mini cup ride. And I think that has a lot to do with the ability to be able to ride on it in a dry way. It's much drier. Now this one is exactly the same cymbal, no rivets yet, but I like these cymbals to be bigger, so I'll probably just keep this like it is. And I've used this for the orchestra and whatnot when we need those kinds of things for the movies that we do, the movie scores. So it's not even in the same ballpark as that other one. It's heavier, it's smaller. I guess they decided that this was going to be the design. Although I haven't played a lot of these, so maybe there's some, maybe you guys out there have some of them. You can tell me if you like the 20s. But that's, that cymbal. Now, it does sound good to roll on it. And these sound really good with rods. as well as with brushes. They don't have any ridges whatsoever. Just a tiny, tiny bit of lathing there. So those are the two Paistes that I have. And, you know, I like this one. It's nice, but it's nothing compared to this. So this is pretty much the main cymbal that I use whenever I'm playing jazz for any kind of China or Swiss knocker sound. Now, there's some other options, obviously, for you out there. All these companies now are making these things. Istanbul, Bosphorus, all the others. There's plenty of custom cymbal makers out there that are making them. Best thing I could tell you is to go out there and try as many as you can. Sometimes these shows, like the PAS show, the NAMM show, they're great for going there because you could try maybe a whole bunch of them. Some of these companies set up shop there for a few days, and you can go through those cymbals and maybe buy one you like. That's what I would recommend with these. They're so specialized. It's not like you're going to go into a store and find, 20 of these like you're going to find 20, ride cymbals or something like that. They're just pretty rare. While we got you here, let me show you a few other things that I have. So I also have this Jack Dejohnette version of a China cymbal. It's from that same series that I showed you the ride cymbal from, the signature ride. And it's the Sabian. This is that cymbal. And this is part of that set of those. And it's really a strange cymbal. I'm not sure quite what to do with it. I've used it on a few recordings and as a special effect. I think I'm going to put some rivets in it, though, because it's so dry. It's definitely different, that's for sure. And I'm pretty sure maybe this week or the next, I'll pop some rivets in it, and that's going to give it a whole new character. But it's, like I said, it's very dry, it's very heavy. I could see definitely using this in kind of a jazz fusion situation. It never really builds up, which is very cool. So the jury's still out on this one, but I enjoy playing on it. The times that I've recorded with it, it just kind of draws a lot of attention to itself. So kind of, it's more of a solo kind of cymbal thing. That's what I think right now. Talk to me in a year, I might change my mind. So that's the Jack Dejohnette Signature Series Chinese. All right. Now, it is important for some of these to clamp them down just slightly tighter than the other cymbals. And I do that on these heavier Chinese cymbals because they'll tend to move around quite a bit. Now, let's look at some rarities. This is an Atlas. It's an Italian cymbal, I believe. It's a Chinese. It's a 20. This was the first Chinese cymbal I got. And it's got one of those raised bells. And this is kind of like a Wuhan. This is the traditional way of making these things, where they're not a hybrid between a regular cymbal bell, but this is that traditional kind of almost raised cup bell. And let's just put this on there so it doesn't get out of control. Now this cymbal is pretty cool. I've used it in a rock setting and also in kind of a jazz fusion setting. It's missing one rivet. I got to pop that back in there. So it's kind of too thin to ride on, which happens with kind of the Wuhan design of these cymbals. They're just a little too thin. They're just meant to be crashed, you know. You get the idea. It's more of a energy kind of rock cymbal, not really a jazz cymbal. But I bought it thinking I could use it for jazz, and I can't because it just doesn't sound right. Now, when you play it lightly with brushes, it's not too bad, but to ride on it, it's just too thin. So again, more of an effects cymbal than anything. And before we go here, let me show you one more cymbal. And this is a Wuhan. So most all of you are familiar with these things. These are made in Wuhan, China. And this is what they look like. This is a traditional Chinese cymbal. Okay, I think they call it a lion cymbal. I could be wrong with that, but again, well, you know what? I'll just leave this off because I won't have it on there long. So this is a great cymbal, but again, not necessarily for riding on. So this is more of the sound that you would have heard Mel Lewis use. Very dark, very funky, a lot of white noise. Problem is, I've tried out probably 60 or 70 of these, and big ones. It's hard to get that definition that you need out of them. And most of them had some sort of hum. You hear this one has a little hum once they build up a little. So that's the issue. Maybe you'll get lucky. I mean, there's, you know, thousands and thousands of these out there, and they're really cheap. Now, Dream Cymbals makes some of these, and I've tried some of those out. But again, the problem with hum, I do a lot of recording, and that's really important to me when I record. If I hear a cymbal humming, it drives me nuts, and it drives other people nuts too. They might not know why, but they have a hum. And a lot of people don't hear that, and they don't know until you hear. I hear lots of recordings, and I'll hear cymbals with hum, and I just don't like it. Most really great drummers know about this, and they know not to use a cymbal with any kind of hum. But these cymbals, almost all of them have a hum. Mel's did not have a hum, so he just got a really good one, or maybe it was, I've seen pictures of it, and I saw it live, and it looked similar to this in a lot of ways, but it was big, you know, and it had rivets. So yeah, maybe he had a few of them. So that's the thing. You got to go hunting, and maybe you'll get lucky. With cymbals, it's always like that. You have to look around. You could find stuff. I found a lot of great cymbals in the strangest places. So if you go to one of these shows, you can try them out. The main thing is to know what sound you're looking for, and you'll know that by listening to recordings Great recording. So, you know, all the Dizzy Gillespie live recordings will have that cymbal that we were talking about. Not necessarily the studio recordings. And then all the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis stuff and all of his stuff, he always used that cymbal. And a lot of times he would use it under sax soli sections, where the whole saxophone section was playing. It just sounded incredible. It's a great match tonally for that kind of thing. So if you listen to those records, you'll have that sound in your head, and then when you play it, you'll say, ah, that's it. And that's how I am with that Paiste. So I hope this answers some of the questions about that Paiste cymbal and maybe about some of these other China cymbals or Swish knocker or whatever you want to call them. So we'll see you soon. Thanks.